Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, the tale of an Egyptian mother who lived as a man for more than 40 years to provide for her family. Also, how the gender gap extends into retirement, with women on average found to be living on nearly 30% less than their male peers. And how one French pilot refuses to allow her disability from taking to the skies. Now, she's been lauded by the Egyptian public for being an exemplary mother, even receiving an award from the nation's president. But until recently, the 65-year-old widow had been living and working as a man for more than 4 decades in order to earn money for her family. Our team on the ground sent us this report on a very courageous woman.
You find them on street corners across Egypt, men who earn a living by polishing other people's shoes. But under this cloak, known as a galabiya, hides a 65-year-old woman. Sisa Abu Daw's husband died when she was 21. To find a job and avoid sexual harassment, she shaved her head and started wearing men's clothes.
He passed away when I was 6 months pregnant. I didn't want to marry again. What else could I have done?
She recently gave up her secret to the Egyptian press and has been greeted with mostly positive reactions.
It's a surprise for all of us. It's the first time we've seen him as a woman. No, it's not strange. I wish all women could work.
Dressing as a man earned her respect as well as money. But deeply conservative values are still entrenched across the country, particularly in the towns of Upper Egypt. Sisa lives a few kilometers from Luxor, Upper Egypt's provincial capital. While some family members refused to speak to her, friends and other relatives supported her and kept her secret.
When they started doing it, her brothers and sisters were upset. They cut her off and stopped visiting her.
Sisa's lived on her own since her daughter married. Her walls are decorated with family photos and tools. Sisa spent several years working in a brick factory and on a farm before she began polishing shoes. Her story reached Egypt's president. On the country's Mother's Day on March 21st, he gave her a certificate for exceptional motherhood. She went to meet him dressed in her galabiya, and even at home, Sisa's galabiya stays on.
I will never take it off, never. Don't get me upset. That's it or nothing. It's protecting me and my daughter. Should I have worn tight, sexy clothes and got married?
Sisa has spent over 4 decades working and praying with men and doing her best to look and behave like them. But that's never been a reason to stop her enjoying laughs and a gossip with her friends.
Now in Afghanistan, protests are still continuing as hundreds take the streets demanding justice for a woman who was beaten to death by a mob. The 27-year-old named Farhunda was falsely accused of burning pages from the Quran. The attack was recorded on video by bystanders and widely shared on the internet. Authorities have condemned the killing. Now, on this show, we've talked plenty about the gender wage gap, and not surprisingly, the gender gap is equally an issue when it comes to retirement. According to the OECD, women pensioners are, on average, living with nearly 30% less than men in the developed world. Figures show Estonia, for instance, has the smallest pension gap. Greece has 25%, the US 35%, France 36%, and Germany a staggering 45%. And here to talk about it today with me is Monica Quasar, the Head of Social Policy at the OECD. Monica, thanks for being with us. Let's start with those figures. Why is the gap so small in Estonia when you compare that to Germany, where it's a staggering 45%?
Well, in most countries, the pensions that people receive when they retire are closely linked to what they have done during their active lives, meaning whether they've worked continuously and contributed to their future pension plans. So in Estonia, you have a situation where women have traditionally been employed and working mostly full-time, and so they have been building up their own pension entitlements. Now contrast that with a country like Germany, where many women, particularly when they have children, stop working quite quickly, work only part-time, and this, of course, has then a very large impact on their pensions.
It's certainly not the image you have of Germany, especially given that the Chancellor is a woman.
That is true. The Chancellor is a woman, but at the same time, you have to remember she doesn't have any children, and the Chancellor will not have a problem in having a pension when she's older and when she retires, but other women who have children and who have stopped and working part-time will have that problem.
More and more women are in the workforce than ever before, so why is there such a significant gap?
What we're seeing today in terms of pension gap is, of course, the legacy of the past. The women who are receiving pensions today are older women, and they have, for the largest part, not had constant careers, because these women, as was usual the habit, relied mostly on their husbands to bring home the money, and they stayed at home and took care of the children, which meant that they had very few pension entitlements in their own right. And now we are also seeing a situation where women have a much higher life expectancy than men. So what happens? You will find many older women living on their own as they're old, and then they have very low pensions, which over time are adjusted only to prices. So they sit there with small pensions, whereas younger women today are much more likely to accumulate more pension entitlements on their own.
So that gap is likely to decrease over time, I take it?
It looks like in most countries, if women continue to work more and work particularly more hours, then they will also have much higher pension entitlements in the future. So we are hoping that we will see much smaller pension gaps in the future. But an important condition for this to happen is, of course, that countries have the adequate childcare policies in place so that these women can actually work and have children at the same time.
So what does it mean for the developed world, especially when so many countries these days have ageing populations?
For ageing populations, it is particularly important to mobilize all available talent in the labor markets. And we have a lot of talent to mobilize among women, because women are often very well educated. Nowadays, they're better educated than young men, but they're still not often enough in the labor market. So by bringing more people into work, by bringing more women into work, by increasing the hours that women are working, we can get a bang for economic growth. And this is what more and more countries are realizing now. And for example, you have in Japan, Prime Minister Abe putting the integration of women in the labor market in Japan as one of his prime priorities for economic growth. So you really do see that mentalities are moving now that population aging is starting to hit the countries.
But it's not just dependent on governments, is it? I mean, it's right across the board in terms of changing mindsets.
It is a very important issue that needs to be addressed by everybody in society. It needs to be addressed, of course, by governments, but governments can only set the framework. Where things really have to happen is in companies. So we need employers to realize that women's talent is important, that they need to give women the flexibility that they need during childbearing years to accommodate both the work and the family responsibilities, but that they then need to give women all the chances to reintegrate full-time into their jobs if they would like that, or to give them the flexibility to continue working according to a more comfortable schedule.
I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Monica Quasar, thank you so much. Now to a tale of inspiration. Paralysed since the age of 16 after an accident, Doreen Bonneton has overcome numerous obstacles in order to fly as a pilot. Mariam Saab reports on one woman who refuses to be grounded.
At the wheel and in command, Doreen Bonneton takes to the skies like any other pilot, with a catch. This plane has been specially customised. At 41 years old, Bonneton is a paraplegic. Despite her disability, she leads a relatively normal life. That includes school runs to collect her 8-year-old daughter. It was her passion for flying that cost the then 16-year-old her legs. In 1991, she was one of 4 on board a light aircraft when it malfunctioned.
We hit a mountainside. I remember screaming and then nothing.
The sole survivor, she spent 12 hours stuck in the plane's cabin.
I couldn't move. I kept screaming for help. Today I don't know how I did it, how I found the resources to fight against death and the cold.
Soon after, Bourneton learned that she would never walk again.
I was 16 and I wanted to live.
Not one to keep her feet on the ground. 24 years after the crash, not only does Bourneton continue to pilot planes, but she's soared to new heights, adding aerobatics to her repertoire. Since making her mark on the world of aviation, Bourneton has been given access to big-time runways like Roissy-Charles de Gaulle Airport.
Tableau d'alarme, check.
It's a 15-minute flight to Roissy. As she approaches the airport, all her senses need to kick into gear. A large plane is landing on the left. The danger is to get caught in the draft of the engine. Another challenge, there's no more than a 10-minute window for landing.
It's like we're heroes who'd just flown across the Atlantic.
Her next challenge is to rise above expectation yet again by piloting a solo aerobatic flight.
And finally, they were undoubtedly the stars of this year's science fair at the White House, wearing superhero red capes over their uniforms. These 6-year-old Girl Scouts proudly presented their page-turning robot to President Barack Obama himself. The Troop from Tulsa, Oklahoma, explained to the American leader that they'd come up with the idea so as to help disabled or elderly people to read. And so, in awe of the young girls, the President demanded a hug at the end of the presentation.
Girls change the world. I like that.
They certainly do. And that's it for now. And if you'd like to comment on what you've just seen, you can head to our Facebook page. That's France24, full stop, the 51%. Or do send us a tweet at _51%. Thanks for your feedback so far. And please keep those comments rolling in. Until our next program, bye for now.